Can the almost 2-year-old LG V50 really compete against the new iPhone 12 Pro Max? Well, as they say, that's why we play the game. How's it, Grant here? Welcome back to another camera comparison video. And so can the almost 2-year-old LG V50 really compete against the new iPhone 12 Pro Max? Well, that's why I do these tests. I ran a poll on my channel and you said you want to see another comparison of the V50 up against the iPhone. So here we go. Take a look at all the photos and videos. I'm going to show you them all in both good and low light so you can judge for yourself if the V50 is still holding its own against the 12 Pro Max or if time has just passed it by. And I know the colors on this 4K video from the V50 look pretty off, and that's just how it's been since launch. It looks pretty decent on the phone, but once you take it off the phone, look at it on the computer, this is how it looks. But as you'll see later, the 1080p footage looks much better. So let's just go ahead and take a look at all the photos and videos, and I'll come back at the end and let you know what I thought about how each of these phones performed. Everyone, so we're testing out the video in the park here on the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the LG V50. So we're starting out with the ultra wide angle lens so you can see what the field of view looks like on each of these phones here. And I can go ahead and switch into the main wide angle lens on each. So there's the iPhone and there's the V50. So it's nice you can switch between the lenses while recording. The iPhone does it a little bit smoother. You saw maybe some of a bright flash or something with the lens transition on the LG, but it is nice that you can switch between those lenses. As I point down, you can kind of see the exposure in the sky adjust as I point back up to it. And we can go ahead and pan over to the right here and test some of the zoom capabilities. So we can go to 2.5 times telephoto lens on the iPhone there, and we'll go into the telephoto on the LG. And then max zoom here, 7 times on the iPhone. And let's go into 10 times zoom on the LG. Both are looking pretty stable and fairly clear, at least in the viewfinder. And we'll back them out, all the way out. And we'll test autofocus here on the post. So first on the iPhone. So quick focus and refocus here from the iPhone one last time. And a really nice blurred background or shallow depth of field there. Now the V50. So there we go, focused in. So pretty decent autofocus, definitely a little bit slower and not as much of a background blurred naturally there on the V50, but still autofocus still not too bad there. So let's go ahead and test stabilization here as I walk down the stairs. And these both should look pretty decent as far as stabilization goes, especially at 1080p. But do let me know what you're seeing, if you see any differences there in stabilization. And I'll pull up here and pan up into the sky, see how it handles exposure. All right, here we are with the same test again, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. And starting out with the ultra wide angle lens again on each. So we test for exposure. If I point down, you'll see the sky kind of get blown out there. And as you pan back up, it'll readjust. So that's what the ultra wide angle lens looks like. And we'll go into the main wide on the iPhone and now on the LG. Again, smoother transition from lens to lens on the iPhone than it is on the LG there. But we'll pan over here to the right and test zoom on that cell tower again. So again, 2.5 times telephoto on the iPhone and 2 times telephoto on the LG. And we'll zoom all the way into 7 times digital on the iPhone and a max 10 times here on the V60. And that actually looks clearer in 4K than it did at 1080p to me, at least on the V50, at least what I can tell in the viewfinder, but let me know what you're seeing. And we'll zoom all the way back out on the iPhone and on the LG. And we'll test autofocus here at 4K. So first with the iPhone, still nice, snappy focus and refocus. And we'll test with the LG. So again, still snappy autofocus and refocus, maybe not quite as fast as the iPhone, but still good autofocus here on the V50 as well. So we'll test stabilization at 4K, walk down the stairs, see how both of these do as far as stabilization in 4K. And then we'll pull up here and pan around the park and see how it handles this lighting in the sky now.
That's how I got that heat, let's go.
Hey everyone, so here's some front-facing footage from the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the LG V50. This is at 1080p 30 frames per second, which is the max resolution and frame rate of the V50's front-facing camera. The iPhone can shoot up to 4K, but I want to test the same resolution here from the front-facing cameras. The V50 is in its wide-angle mode. It can go to a more narrow field of view if you want, but you cannot change to that while you start recording. So this is about the same field of view as the iPhone, so I just want to use this one. And obviously this is outdoors in a little bit of shade, so you can see what that looks like in this lighting. But as you pan around, you'll see the afternoon sky behind me kind of gets blown out with that sun. And I'll keep panning around so you can see what it looks like here into the changing light conditions, and with the sun directly in my face, what that kind of looks like there. But we'll pan all the way around and we'll walk to test stabilization here so you can see what that looks like from the front-facing cameras. But there's just a quick test and some footage in 1080p. Let me know what you think of these front-facing cameras and how they compare. Everyone, so here's a low light test between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the LG V50. This is at 1080p 30 frames per second, and we're starting with the ultra wide angle lens on each. Now obviously the iPhone has the wider field of view here, but I can switch over into the main angle lenses here. So first on the iPhone and now on LG, and I'll pan up into that bright street light so we can see how it handles a lens flare there. And it's a very bright light, so lens flare is going to happen on pretty much any camera. These seem to be handling it decently well considering how bright that really is. And I'll pan over here and we'll start walking to test stabilization, as well as to test the lighting changes here. So that was a fairly well lit area. and we're going to walk over to a much darker area so you can see how both of these cameras handle that light transition. Also pay attention to the stabilization here. When it gets darker, you see more micro jitters. But both these should be doing pretty decently well at 1080p as far as stabilization goes. As you can see here on the corner, it gets much darker. All we have are these walkway lights. And I'll pull up right here and pan up into the night sky. We got a bunch of clouds, so you can see some of that over there. And I'll pan over here to the left where there's a little bit more light so you can see how that shifts there. So there's a quick low light test in 1080p. Everyone, so here we go with the same test again on the iPhone 12 Pro Max and LG V50, this time at 4K 30 frames per second. Starting out with the ultra wide angle lens again here, so you can see what that looks like here in 4K. I'm actually going to pan up into the night sky there because we actually have the moon and some clouds there. And it's pretty dark here in 4K, which is going to happen. It's going to look darker than the 1080p footage, but especially on the ultra wide angle lens. So I'm going to shift over to the main lens here on the iPhone. See they get brighter. Same thing here on the V50. And you can see all those clouds and definition in the clouds around that moon, so it looks pretty cool. And let's go ahead and go to the telephoto lens on the iPhone and telephoto lens on the V50. So that's actually a pretty cool shot there and a good test of all the lenses as well. So let's back out to the main lens on the iPhone and back on the LG. Pan down here. See how it does into that bright light here in 4K. And we'll pan this way and do the stabilization test again in 4K so you can see how that might differ from the 1080p stabilization and footage you just saw. Again, we'll see how the lighting transition happens here from both these cameras, from that wallet area to this darker area. And again, like I said, it's going to be darker than the 1080p footage. That's typical with 4K. As you round the corner here into the much darker area, again just lit up by the walkway lights. And again, we'll pull up right here and pan back up into that night sky and pan over here to the left where there's a little bit more light again, so you can see some of that definition there in 4K.
Downtown, I got that heat, let's go.
Hey everyone, so here's a low light test from the front facing cameras on both the phones. I've got this at 1080p 30 frames per second because that's the max resolution on the LG front facing camera. The iPhone can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second, but I want to keep this even here for this test. And obviously I'm in a decently lit area here with all these lights. You can see the very bright street lights still behind me, so you can see how the cameras handle that. But let's go ahead and start walking to test stabilization, as well as to test out the lighting here. So I'll walk over to a little bit darker area so you can see how these cameras adjust for those darker conditions. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of what the stabilization looks like here on the front facing cameras in a bit of low light. And I'm going to pass a fountain here to my right, so that's going to compete with that sound for the sound of my voice. We'll test the audio with that. And you can see here it's a bit darker, but as I pan around here, I'll show you some really bright street lights behind me. You can see how these front facing cameras handle that. And actually they're handling it very well. There's not as much lens flare as we're seeing from the rear facing cameras on both of these phones. The viewfinder, the LG, does look a lot darker here though. So as I pan around, let's finish this off in a bit of this darker area here so we can see what that looks like on both of these phones in 1080p. But let me know what you think of the front facing cameras here in some low light. Hey everyone, so now you've seen all the photos and videos for yourself. What do you think? Did the LG V50 hold its own up against the 12 Pro Max? Or did the iPhone pretty much dominate the almost 2-year-old LG V50? Leave your comment down below and let me know what you think. But as far as what I think from the rear-facing cameras were actually pretty surprising because I think the V50 actually did hold its own there. I like the colors that are coming out of the V50 more than I do out of the 12 Pro Max. And pretty much I think the iPhone's been boosting its colors or oversaturating them since pretty much the iPhone 10. And I know you can turn off scene detection, which will bring them down a little bit, but I still prefer the colors coming out of the LG V50 overall. I also think the sharpness and the macro photos still look very good coming out of the V50. And for a 2-year-old phone, it's still pretty impressive. And I think in a lot of instances, it's even better than its newer version, the LG V60. So I definitely prefer the rear cameras for photos from the LG V50. Now, as far as video, I think for 1080p, it competes pretty well. But in the daytime video, the iPhone's clearly superior. The highlights and shadows are a lot clearer. The definition in the clouds and the sky is just much sharper on the iPhone. So for daytime video, I'm giving it to the iPhone hands down. For low light video though, in 1080p, I thought the V50 competed very well, and it was pretty much very close to what I was seeing from the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, as far as 4K video, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, for some reason, the LG V50 colors are really off once you take them off of the phone. If you look at them on the phone, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look too bad at all. But once you look at it on your computer, the 4K footage, and what you're seeing pretty much here on this video, the colors are way out of whack and just don't look very good at all. And I'm not really sure what's going on there, but it's pretty much been that way since the phone has launched. So I'm not sure why that's the case, but that's just how it's been. As far as the front-facing camera, pretty much the colors I like on the V50, again, pretty much the same comments that I made on the rear-facing cameras, but I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max produces more consistent results overall. It definitely has a better portrait mode and performs better in low light because it has a night mode, and the V50 doesn't have night mode on its front-facing camera. But when the lighting conditions are ideal and just right, the V50 produces, I think, better photos just because, again, like I said, those colors just come out looking a lot better to my eyes on the V50. But again, overall, I'm going to have to give it to the iPhone 12 Pro Max for the front-facing cameras. So that's just what I think about how each of these cameras performed. Again, I think for a 2-year-old phone, the LG V50 did very well. And given the fact that it's no more than $300 versus the over $1,000 price tag on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, depending on your camera needs, the V50 could still be a very good option. So again, that's just what I have to think. Leave a comment down below with what you think, and let's continue our conversation down there. And as always, thanks for watching.